Hello again, my friend, and welcome back to another edition of Sound Fiction. The world is a funny place, isn't it? It all seems to turn on its own while we go about our lives, uninterested and unbothered about the driving force behind this giant rock hurtling through space. But sometimes, we wake up and snap out of our mental fog to see this place for what it really is. It doesn't take much. Today, we join a foreigner in China, a stranger in a strange place, and hear about an odd encounter which changes the way he sees everything. So get ready and tune everything else out as we get lost in episode 62 of Sound Fiction: Crimes Against Humanity. Quite a few years ago, before I moved closer to home, before I changed careers, before I got married and started a family, I lived in China and worked as an English teacher. It was an interesting time in life, and China was a more than interesting country. At first, I didn't know what to expect. Coming from the US, the impression is that China is like an intense, messy, third world country. But the truth is, it's not really like that at all. I settled into Beijing and was pleasantly surprised at how clean it was, how industrious yet easygoing the people were, and how good the overall quality of life was. I have to say, the air pollution was pretty bad, but my first-hand experience of the country totally shattered my expectations. I worked at a private company which sent foreign English teachers to public schools all over the city. So I taught English classes at a few different locations, mostly elementary schools. It was interesting to see the daily lives of young Chinese kids. Definitely much different than the experience of children growing up in America. Their schedules were highly regimented. School started at 7:30 sharp. Students had to be seated with both hands on their desks as the morning announcements aired over the school intercom. Then, at 7:45, all the children made their way to the main courtyard for a short morning exercise. They lined up in perfectly straight lines by class, forming a large grid which took up the outdoor space. At the head of the grid would be a high-ranking teacher, like a vice principal or someone like that, leading the exercise routine. This specific song would play every single time, no matter which school I was at. Clearly a state-mandated tune. It was this cutesy little marching number. The kids would follow the movements of the lead teacher in front. They would march, kick their knees up, and rotate their arms in accordance with the beat. It was a fascinating thing to witness. So many children actually behaving themselves and working together. Someone watching this from the Western world might find it quite authoritarian, or even dystopian. But being there in person, I can say it didn't feel like that at all. They were teaching the kids discipline, routine, and structure. Something I could have done a little more with growing up in the States. School life for these kids was totally different to the experience I had. But at the end of the day, they were still kids. They laughed and played at break time, bickered and fought over things like school supplies and Pokemon, but they also had a sense of pride when it came to being productive and contributing. They loved extra responsibilities, like relaying messages to other teachers, or being the designated chalkboard cleaner. They displayed so much enthusiasm for these extra jobs that sometimes I'd assign 2 of them to a task that only required 1. The Chinese English teachers clearly did this as well, when I'd be sitting in the teacher's office and 3 students would come in to tell me that class was going to start 10 minutes late. The classes were pleasant to teach as well. The kids rarely acted up, and almost all of them loved answering questions, even the ones who couldn't speak English very well. Bless them. I'd teach a couple classes in the morning, and then have my lunch before my last few classes in the afternoon. My favorite part of the day had to be at 12:15 p.m. No matter what was going on, a notification bell would go off over the intercom, and all the students would just stop whatever they were doing. Everyone would sit down and put their books away because it was face exercise and eye resting time. This part of their daily routine completely mesmerized me. One lead student would come to the front of the class and stand next to me, while the rest of the class closed their eyes. Then, just like the morning exercises, another state-mandated tune would play over the intercom. Except this one was more reminiscent of the Jeopardy theme music. You know, the one where the contestants are thinking as they write down their answers? The lead student would promptly call out each exercise and demonstrate for everyone. The rest of the class would follow instructions. They would start by rubbing their temples, following this chant about 4 times, then move under their eyes and rub their cheekbones. Other face exercises included caressing the jawline and pressing a square pattern into their foreheads using the thumbs. It was a peculiar thing, watching these students do these exercises. It gave me a soothing sense of ASMR, even though I wasn't doing the exercises myself. Something about how calm and peaceful everyone was gave me this tingly feeling behind my ears and neck. And I know I wasn't the only one, because I could remember this one kid, a tall, goofy-looking fellow with horrendously awkward posture and demeanor. He would sit in the back of the class and do the exercises. And you know that scene in Napoleon Dynamite where he's performing that song using hand signs? There's this one shot of him looking up at his hands, making a bird slowly flap its wings. Just totally zoned out. Well, that was this kid. Eyes closed, mouth open, 2 fingers rubbing under his eyes, completely lost in the moment. I always got a kick out of him. Acclimating to daily city life was a lot easier than I imagined as well. At first, things were pretty hectic. I lived in a busy neighborhood, so there was a lot of hustle and bustle. Cars driving everywhere, foot traffic all over the place, non-stop chatter from the constant river of people flowing through the street. It was a bit overstimulating in the beginning, but as time went on, these things gradually became background noise as I settled in. Every once in a while, I'd experience something pretty shocking, like a man with cerebral palsy taking an entire day to walk down the block, or a local food stall vendor who told me his father was murdered by his uncle. But one interaction sticks out more than the others, for reasons I can't really articulate. One day, I was walking to the supermarket at the end of my road to do the weekly shop. I did this every Sunday, and at this point I could pretty much do it with my eyes closed, it was so routine. Except this one day, I noticed a man on the sidewalk, sitting on a bench just outside the main entrance, who stuck out for some odd reason. He was a heavy-set guy with long hair and baggy clothes. Not like they didn't fit, but more like a style choice, unlike the typical local fashion. I could tell he was from Asian descent, but definitely not Chinese. I locked eyes with him by accident, probably from staring a moment too long. And when I did, he got up and approached me without hesitation. Oh shit, I thought to myself as he got closer. Hey, excuse me. Are you going into the market right now? Yeah, I am. Why? What's up, man? I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm just really thirsty and I don't have any money right now. Do you think you'd be able to get me some water? I was really surprised by this man's request. I just sort of assumed he was some kind of loner or weirdo looking for conversation or something. Asking for water was the last thing I'd expect from a stranger on the street. Yeah, I can do that. Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I haven't had anything to drink all day and I'm so thirsty. Are you hungry too? I can get you some food if you want. Really? That would be so amazing if you did. Yeah, just wait here. I'll be right back. I went inside and got my food, along with 2 big jugs of water for him, and a couple bags of bread rolls with pork floss and hot dog bits in them. I was very intrigued by this guy and his unusual situation. Here he was, at some random neighborhood in Beijing, clearly not from here, asking strangers for food and water. His clothes were clean, so I was fairly certain that he wasn't homeless. And he spoke good English, which either meant he was foreign or privately educated. When I came outside, his eyes lit up when he saw the water and bread rolls. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's no problem. Hey, you're not from here, are you? No, I'm from Spain. Well, actually, I'm from Mongolia, but I've been living in Spain for the last 13 years, since about '03, I think? He pulled out a Spanish driver's license and handed it to me. Oh, wow. What are you doing here in Beijing? I actually have an appointment here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Really? So you don't live here or work here or anything? No. I spent all my money getting here for a meeting in a couple days. The only problem is, I spent the last of it on a guest house for a few more nights. Oh shit. Well, hopefully you'll have your meeting by then, right? Yeah, right. Anyway, this really helps me a lot, so thank you. No worries, man. Good luck with everything. I went on my way, patting myself on the back for helping a stranger with my kind heart. Not long after I got home, the self-righteous praise slowly wore off, and curious thoughts started pouring in. Why would that guy spend all of his money to come here from Spain? What was his meeting at Foreign Affairs all about? Was he looking for a job? He said meeting and not interview. What would he do after? How was he planning on getting home? So many questions flooded my mind. I started kicking myself for not asking when I had the chance. It was too late now, and I just had to live with the consequences of my inaction. The week carried on as usual. I taught the kids, went to the gym, got home, watched TV, slept, and did it again. The thought of that guy popped into my head periodically as I went about my routine. It badgered away at my brain, taunting me with potential answers to the questions I wish I'd asked. There was no point to the endless wondering, but for some reason it refused to leave me alone. I watched the kids hard at work during school hours, participating in class, writing in their books, doing their exercises. Much like the thoughts in my head, their work ethic was relentless, and I began to wonder how they were able to do it. At the gym, one particular guy caught my attention and also began badgering my mind. He was a smaller fellow, about 5'8", and absolutely shredded. He was a streetwear fashion kind of guy, with a gaudy attitude to match his look. Years in the future, when Squid Game Season 2 would eventually come out, a character named Thanos would instantly remind me of this guy, and it'd make me smile. Anyway, back to 2016. To make things easier, let's just call him Thanos. Thanos would walk in wearing some combination of Bape, Supreme, Nike, or Adidas, also with his gym bag and some assortment of drinks, usually black coffee, Red Bull, and something random like aloe vera juice. He'd set up in the corner, laying out all his stuff like a display. Not for anyone else, but just for himself. Then, he would start working out. His workouts consisted of walking over to the dumbbells, doing a few curls with one arm, and flexing in the mirror. Then he'd go back to his stuff, take a sip from one of his drinks, and put on an accessory from his bag, like a headband. Then he might go over to the pull-up bar, do 2 pull-ups, look at his abs in the mirror, take a selfie, switch out the headband for glasses, sip a different drink, and repeat the process. He would do this for hours, and I found it infuriating. How could someone be so full of themselves simply for existing? He wasn't even doing any work. His actions baffled me. Eventually, the weekend would roll around and I'd go out drinking with my friends. I'd be met by my usual Sunday morning hangover and the growling reminder that I'd have to go do my weekly shop. I remember this particular Sunday was pretty bad, so I left it quite late and didn't go out until daylight started to fade. When I finally mustered up the strength to get out, twilight had encapsulated the city with an eerie glow. I arrived at the end of the road to a shocking surprise. There he was again, the man who asked me for water, sitting on the same bench as the first time. He saw me and instantly stood up to say something. Hey man, how are you? Hey, what are you still doing here? Oh, they pushed my meeting back. They said I have to come in next week. I noticed his clothes were a bit dirty, his hair unkempt, like he hadn't washed in days. Are you hungry? You want some food and water? Yes, please. Do you mind? I could really use it right now. Yeah, just wait. I'll bring something out. Inside the supermarket, I picked out a few things and thought intensely about the man. His situation had changed, and not for the better. I met him outside and handed over a bag of groceries. A lot more than the first time I met him.
Oh my God, thank you so much. This is too kind.
Really, it's fine. So what's going on, man? What happened to your meeting?
I don't know.
They seem to be pushing me off, telling me to come back later. I don't know how long I can wait. You said you had no money, right?
Yeah, I'm completely broke.
What about the guest house? Are you still staying there?
No, they kicked me out.
I've been sleeping outside, under a bridge by the river over there.
Jesus, man.
Sorry to hear that.
It's okay. It's only for a little bit anyway.
So I wanted to ask, what's your meeting with Foreign Affairs about?
I've come to complain to them. I need to tell them about crimes against humanity by the US government.
Really? What crimes?
Have you ever heard of something called MK Ultra?
Yeah, I have. That's a really well-known project.
There's a huge US military base in Spain, a Navy base, and they have been carrying out experiments there. Bad ones.
I thought MK Ultra ended a long time ago.
That project ended in the 70s, but the research is still going on, under different names. It never stopped.
Immediately I was skeptical, but so intrigued. I had to know more.
What kind of research are they doing? They are testing different kinds of products, mainly computer chips that go in your brain.
What? Really?
Yeah, and also drugs that are meant to interact with these chips.
What do the chips do?
Well, if you have one in your head, they can turn it on and see what you see from somewhere else. They can also hear what you hear.
No way.
It's crazy. No, really, they can. The technology isn't perfect yet, but they can do it. They can make it so that people with these chips can communicate without talking and share audio and visuals with each other, no matter where they are. Also, if you misbehave, they can send a signal to make you feel the worst pain you could ever imagine.
That's fucking insane.
Do you have one? No, but I met people there who do. I saw them turn the pain on someone at the base, too. It was horrible.
What happened?
Well, this one guy refused to do a test, so they turned it on. He was fine one second, and then the next, he was on the floor screaming and vomiting everywhere. I was too scared to watch.
Oh my God. So, what were you doing there?
They were testing a drug on me.
What kind of drug?
I don't really know. Something meant to interact with the chips. I think they were using me to see if it was safe for humans.
Whoa. Was it?
It was the first few times. I didn't feel anything. But then, the last time, I got really sick. I thought I was going to die. So I begged them to take me to the hospital. When they didn't take me anywhere and just recorded what happened, I knew something was really wrong with this whole study.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was too much. I was afraid they weren't going to let me go. But eventually they did, so I just got my things together and tried to talk to somebody.
Like who?
First, I tried the Spanish government, but they wouldn't listen, like calling me crazy and stuff. I think they already knew. Then I thought the only people who would probably listen are enemies of the US. That's why I came here.
I was beyond fascinated. I wanted to know more.
I considered inviting him back to my house to talk to him about it in depth. But then, a terrifying thought entered my head. You don't think they're keeping track of you, do you? I don't know. Maybe. The CIA has people everywhere, you know?
Suddenly, a straight shot of paranoia injected itself right into my mind. I thought, what if he is being watched? What if they see him come back to my place and deem me a target? Or even worse, What if they already have? I abruptly cut the conversation short out of fear from the consequences. Man, that's crazy. I gotta get going now. Good luck with everything, and I hope it all works out for you.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. And thank you for the food.
I walked away briskly and tried not to look too suspicious. I didn't think I was being ridiculous for getting out of there so quickly at the time, but soon enough, I did feel ridiculous for letting paranoia get the best of me. The next few days were uneasy, as I constantly looked over my shoulder for any questionable individuals or abnormal presences in my vicinity. Of course, there were none, but that didn't stop me from worrying about the possibilities. At school, I watched the kids go about their business, playing their roles and doing their work. My perception of their day-to-day was starting to shift, as I developed a vague distrust for the authorities who governed these children. And I don't mean their teachers or principals. I'm talking about the ones who decided that they should march in place every morning, to the same song at the same time of day. The people who decided that mandatory eye exercises should be implemented as a form of rest and recovery for the children. Did they really have the youth's best interest at heart? I started looking closer at individual children instead of the group as a whole, and what I saw made me reconsider the effect of their highly regimented lives. What I saw wasn't pride or a propensity to serve the greater community. It was a cold, machine-like glare, void of emotion or any individual personality. They were simply going through the motions, swiftly and perfectly through the motions. Even the eye exercises slowly lost their charm. What was once a relaxing part of the day began to feel stiff and unnatural. I realized all the kids kept their eyes closed because they were instructed to, and they often moved on to the next exercise before the lead student did, because the routine was so ingrained in their muscle memory. Even the Napoleon Dynamite kid appeared less lost in the moment as he appeared to be escaping it. Noticing this stuff got me thinking about the purpose of it all, and all the MK Ultra stuff that guy shared with me. Why do the higher powers do things like this to people? Why do they run inhumane experiments on us? Or tell us which side of the road to drive on? Is it really to create a better, safer society? Or is it all about control? I thought deeper about the US military and the CIA's willingness to carry out these experiments, the strides they were prepared to take in weaponizing the human brain. Of course, the global arms race is a necessary one on all fronts, because if you snooze, you lose. But let's say these secret psychological weapons did give the US an upper hand in some sort of conflict or international affair. Would it really be used to keep our own people safe? Or used to impose more control over others somewhere else? If Germany had won World War II, would residents of the UK still be driving on the left side of the road? I caught myself thinking intensely about this at the gym. I started to wonder what I was actually doing here. Was I working out because someone told me it was better to be stronger and in shape, or because I actually needed it for something in my own life? Just then, Thanos walked in and I thought, oh God, here we go again. He stuck to his usual routine. Curls, headband, drink, pull-ups, selfie, repeat. But this time, I found myself being less irritated with him and more in awe. The longer I watched him, the greater my curiosity grew. What was actually going on in his head? Was Thanos plagued by self-infatuation and hyper-consumerism to the point it had invaded every facet of his life? Or was he simply living freely and doing what he wanted, when he wanted? The weeks went by as I continued on this trajectory of thought. My mind had changed a lot, but my actions didn't. I still went to work, went to the gym, went home, and went out with my friends. I did not see that man outside the supermarket for a long time. I had hoped that he got his meeting and the help he was looking for, whatever help that may be. But part of me was firmly convinced that he most likely did not. This suspicion was confirmed when one day I saw him on the street, not far from the supermarket, begging for money. His clothes were extremely tattered and dirty, his skin caked with grime, and his hair completely tangled and overgrown. The urge to talk to him and hear his story was not there this time. I'm well aware of how prejudiced my feelings towards him absolutely were. The fact that I cared less or felt his testimony was invalid due to his appearance was indeed bad. But I couldn't help from feeling this way. If the story he told me was true, the people he was speaking out against surely benefited from stalling his accusations and letting him succumb to the elements of poverty. No matter how educated and articulate he may be, no one is listening to someone covered in filth and living on the streets. If you were on the train and someone who was clearly homeless approached you, talking about secret military experiments and brain chips, would you listen? I suspect the higher powers at play stalled him on purpose, using our own prejudices against us to block the truth, once again successfully evading judgment without explanation or excuse. I was a bit disappointed that this guy never got to tell his experience to someone who could actually help. But I can't say that I was less surprised. Governments seek control over us in pretty much every way they can, by influencing our thoughts, perceptions, behaviors. At school, I recognized the children's enthusiasm to help out and have extra responsibilities as a side effect of their rigid work schedule. They were constantly reinforced to think that an idle person is dead weight on the group as a whole, that someone who isn't contributing has no value and therefore should be forgotten by society. I no longer recognized their excitement for extra jobs as an eagerness to help, but as a fear of being left behind. To build a productive society based on this fear was clearly an effective strategy, but I did care very much for the kids and hoped for all of them to have good and fulfilling lives. At the gym, I'd see Thanos and watch his workouts from a distance. I'd chuckle to myself every time I'd see him do an exercise that didn't really make sense, put on a new accessory, and take an epic selfie in the mirror. I realized that watching Thanos be himself brought me immense joy. I found it funny that I started off with hate for this guy. Hate that grew into confusion, then amazement, and soon, admiration with respect. I guess it's because he was a kid in elementary school at one point too, marching in place, studying hard, and hustling to prove his worth. But then he grew up, looked around, and realized that being just like everyone else sucks. So he threw on a pair of really cool sneakers, an extremely overpriced headband, and stepped out the door to be the flyest guy in Beijing. And you know what? In fleeting moments, he was. Don't try to convince me otherwise. Life went on, as it does for everyone. I finished my time in China, came back to the Western world, got married to the love of my life, and had a kid. Everything is totally different now, but I still think about the past from time to time. The kids in Beijing, Thanos, that man outside the supermarket. I sometimes ask what they're doing now. Is the Napoleon Dynamite kid at university? Is Thanos married with children too? Is that man still on the streets? Well, now, I don't have to wonder. I was scrolling my phone one day, absent-mindedly, and something strange came up on my feed. A video about 3 men who were arrested in Italy in a plot to set fire to a building at Aviano Air Base, a large US military base. One of these men was an Italian citizen. The other 2 were not. They had shaved heads and scruffy beards, all of them in their mid-30s. The YouTuber who made this video posted it to emphasize how strange of an attack it was and how little media coverage it actually got. Details on the men were sparse, with their motives unclear, and the authorities labeling them terrorists. Something caught my eye about one of the men, and at first I didn't know what it was. But when the video mentioned a Mongolian national, it became clear. I paused the video and took a closer look at him. He had lost weight and appeared totally different with a shaved head. The hair on his face was what I remembered, and once I recognized him, it was unmistakable. The man outside the supermarket. I wondered if he ever got his meeting. If he did, it couldn't have been much help. I then wondered why they chose that building to attack, and what was potentially going on in there. Either way, It didn't matter. The whole ordeal was just another one. Another one of the many. Crimes against humanity. If you or anyone you know has knowledge on the topics discussed in this story, please reach out. I'd love to hear more first-hand testimonies on things like government experiments or international cover-ups. If you made it through the whole story, I want to say thank you for listening and supporting the show. If you really want to show some support, leave a like, comment, positive rating on this podcast, or share it with some friends who also love dark fiction. Join the Discord if you want to be part of the sound fiction community and receive secret information, or become a patron for exclusive benefits. Now, take care until the next time, when we dissolve the boundaries of sound and fiction.